Hi everyone, my name is Ashley Beeson and welcome back to my channel, and today we are continuing our reviews of Spring Summer 2025. Last week we did New York and London Fashion Weeks, and this week we are doing Milan Fashion Week. We'll cover a few of the collections that walked down the runway just like we did last week. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but it's the Italian leg of the fashion month, which means we get some bigger brands across the board naturally. But without further ado, let's just get right into the video. The first collection we're gonna look at is Alberta Ferretti, and it's kind of crazy because she had just announced when I was filming yesterday that she would be stepping down as creative director, which is wild because she's been creative director for a few decades now. She's the namesake of the brand, of course, and so that was an interesting kind of transition to announce right after Milan Fashion Week had concluded. So it'll be interesting to see how the brand progresses and evolves with her no longer being the head of creation. But as Spring Summer 2025 is her last runway that she put together, this collection I actually really loved. I loved the colors, I loved the silhouettes, I loved kind of the storyline. All of it was a very elegant collection. The collection is referred to as ethereal lightness. It is a collection that embodies ease and restraint and refinement. It's very much a juxtaposition to the very extra trends that we do see a lot of the time, and we are kind of seeing a lot of. It's just the exact opposite. It's not crazy, it's not in your face, it's just very there, and it's very simple and easy. The entire collection, fabrication wise, was kind of built around volume and airy fabrics. The idea was to be able to just portray a ton of movement, and the best way to do that is to kind of maintain lightweight fabrics, and that's of course what she did. She used cotton poplins, satins, and obviously the signature chiffon that she uses all the time in her label. There were also, in terms of creating the volume, the airiness comes in the fabric, the volume comes in the way that those fabrications are manipulated through twists and pleats and laser cuts. It just adds that little extra texture to those otherwise super light fabrics. The color palette was in the monochromatic world, keeping to overall neutral and pastel colors with pops of very vibrant colors kind of throughout, but it was all solid colors. There weren't much in the way of prints or multiple colors. It was all very stagnant with just keeping to one color to one look, which I actually really like. I like seeing head to toe colorations. Those are kind of like my favorite types of things. When I see outfits, whether they're dresses, obviously it's gonna be normal for one color, keeping like the top and bottom the same. I like keeping it monochromatic. In terms of the silhouetting that occurred on the runway, it was an evolution of femininity, from blazers to oversized blouses. Shirts are elongated with sheer skirts and tailored shorts underneath. It was a mixture of flowy and tailoring, which is always a very prominent thing in, I think, femininity, but it's just kind of, you know, it shows a progression of how women in femininity can be flowy, but can also have more of that tailored sportswear, menswear type stuff. So I understand the concept of that, and I, again, very much enjoyed it. I think the tailoring just adds more versatility to Ferretti's signature femininity that she always does. It's like a good balance between those two aspects, and you can see it throughout the entire collection. Overall, I do think that the collection is super pretty. I love the neutral looks. I love the pops of color. I don't like the orange because I don't like orange, but I like seeing the bold accents of those colors. Love the blues. I think it's a good collection. I like that there is pops of colors, but obviously keeping it to the more neutral color palette I really like, and it goes with everything. Overall, I think it was a really good collection, and I think it was a really strong way for Alberta Ferretti to exit her namesake fashion house, and so it'll be interesting to see how things progress. But this collection for spring, I absolutely loved it, and I think it is perfect for spring summer. Next we have Roberto Cavalli, and this is the very first collection since his passing. He passed away earlier this year, I believe. So it was going to be interesting to see kind of how they, of course, do the tribute to him and his heritage and his legacy to this brand that he created. The collection itself is a very beachy and laid back one. It's like, it still very much has the sexy energy of what a Cavalli runway is, but it isn't trying too hard, and I like that. And I think spring summer is a really good season to where you don't need to try that hard. It makes sense to not try that hard for spring summer, so I like that they kept that going through this collection, but just added the Cavalli energy into it. The inspiration came from Messina, which is the Sicilian hometown of the creative director, and the collection is basically just a depiction of the beach and the area around the beach and the energy of the beach. The collection starts with whites that are meant for the beach, and then they kind of transition into prints of sunsets and waves, and then they end with the glamazonian dresses that Cavalli is most known for. So that's where that tribute fully comes into play at the very end. Overall, the collection is a mixture of comfort and easiness. It gives a modern viewpoint to what the Roberto Cavalli standard is, and I really liked it. I loved a mixture of a lot of different things. I don't tend to like print motifs. Print motifs can be hit or miss for me. It really depends. But I did like the way that the sunsets and the waves, I did like how they were depicted, and it wasn't as boring as it could have been. It was a lot more interesting. I love the neutrals, I love the whites, and then the looks that were much more beachy and were much more neutral and natural looking. And then once we get into the colors and the prints and stuff, I like seeing it because that is very much Cavalli with having those bold prints in there. I like seeing the transition from the oranges and the sunsets and then going into the blues of like the water and everything. But I do think the best part was those last few ending looks that were the true tribute, and creative director made sure to call upon some of the favorites of Roberto Cavalli to model those dresses down the runway. And so he asked Maria Carla Boscona, and then Alec Weck, Isabelle Fontana, Natasha Pauly, and then Joan Smalls, Karen Elson, and then Eva Herzegova to close the show in those Amazonian dresses that are very Cavalli. And I thought that was a really pretty tribute. And they were, to me, my favorite dresses of the collection, just because they are Cavalli, and I liked the colors, and I liked the drama. And I just thought that overall, I think it was a really good show and a really nice tribute to Cavalli. And I think it still fully has the energy of what a Cavalli runway is, keeping the energy of what he used and just modernizing it, making it a little bit easier. And overall, it was great. Loved it, and I think it was very well done. Next we have Max Mara, and this collection, based around the ideology that the house usually does, is of magic and science. The collection speaks to the pioneering works of the 4th century mathematician, philosopher, astronomer, and teacher Hypatia. And the way that they bring in this inspiration is by drawing parallels between work from Pythagoras and the practice of pattern making. And the way that these two connect is because it is simply symbols on paper that are transformed into 3-dimensional structures. And so the visual that we get and the creation that we get from this inspiration are really using darts as more than just a functioning tool and shape, where they use it as the focal point for the collection. And of course, we all know that darts are normally hidden because they are, of course, part of what gives designs shape. They're for function only. They're never really part of the actual design. They are just there to add shape and proper fitting and proper structure to a garment. But Max Mara chose to run with the idea that these darts should be seen and that they should be part of the details of these tailored pieces. And so the darts are throughout the signature tailoring of the brand and the coats as well. And Max Mara has some of the best tailoring I've seen. I absolutely love Max Mara and I absolutely love their pieces, especially their tailored pieces. So this was super interesting to see darts on the outside and being used as a detail point. And there are further nods to the philosopher through the knitted skirts and dresses and new jacket silhouettes that are sharp and square. So it's the entire collection is basically a balance of logic and structure, and then magic and movement that create depth by creating permanent creases throughout the collection, and that's where those darts come from. The color palette is completely neutral with browns, tans, some navies are in there, and then some creams, and then grays, and then whites, and then blacks. A very neutral palette, which I very much love. And I think, the color palette being neutral across the board, I think just adds a level of sophistication and a level of wearability that it can be anywhere and for anything. And that's what the collection was also for. It was a collection that was meant for anything, everything, early in the day, out at night, in the middle of the day, it doesn't matter. It was just meant for everything in a very classic way, and it is very easy to see that. For me, I really liked this collection. I loved it. I'm gonna sound so repetitive, but I loved the tailored pieces. The brown was an amazing brown. I loved seeing the darts in different places. You have to look a little harder to see them, but I love when you see the fold of the dart or the darts are being used as shapes. I love seeing the changes from having, long coats to shorter shirts, and then those dresses, and then skirts, and then those, little mini shorts. I love seeing just the different designs. Overall, it's such a sophisticated and classic collection, and I love classic looks and classic colors, and some of them are somewhat modernized classic silhouettes in some cases. I just think that overall this collection did exactly what it was supposed to do, and I'm just a sucker for tailored pieces, so obviously I was gonna run towards Max Mara anyways because that is what they do. But this collection was mwah. I absolutely love the tailoring, and I love the way that they took darts and made it fashion instead of function. So I think that they really did a great job with this spring collection. Next is Gucci, and I have to say that I am very happy with the way that Gucci is shifting with the new creative director and the way that he's designed Gucci the last few seasons since he's taken the creative director position. I honestly hated Gucci prior to under the last creative director. I just did not like it. It was horrible for me. There were some things I liked, but normally I just did not like it. But this new creative director has revived my interest in the fashion house. So for me, that's a really good thing. And this collection, to me personally, did not disappoint. I actually really liked it. The collection was inspired by the moment the sun dives into the sea at the end of an August day, and the entire collection had a centerpiece of casual grandeur, and that was where the styling came for this collection. And throughout it, the aesthetic and design of it came from the 60s. There was inspiration of the 60s. Tailoring, lingerie, and leather, those were kind of the main focuses throughout the entire storyline of this collection. There were mixtures of trousers and tanks, and then draped jerseys, and then sheer lace, and then baggy oversized pieces. It was very much just like a mixture of being like simple and tailored and oversized and a little bit more to it. Seeing those two different things is really nice. It's always nice to kind of see something that is simpler and then a little bit more extra, but not too extra, and kind of just having that back and forth between those types of silhouettes. The colorations had kind of a mixture of colors from neutrals to more color driven looks. The favorite hues of the creative director, red and chartreuse, were added to the collection, and I think that they are good colors to add into it. I love the red. I'm a sucker for red, and I do think the chartreuse was a nice bold color to add into the collection. And because this collection was driven by like a summer evening, essentially, the collection had many aspects of vacation throughout its styling, from, you know, like the hats and the sunglasses and the bags, and there were different things that made it feel like a vacation during summer. There are heritage pieces that were a part of the collection. The bamboo bag and the horsebit motif were part of it as well. The entire collection was overall a very interesting merge between the past and the present, and that past and present can be seen as multiple things. It could be, you know, that inspiration from the 60s is the past, and then modernizing the 60s for now is the present. Or you look at the heritage pieces of Gucci coming in a modern way. It's a very interesting past present mush, and I really liked it. I loved the reds. Again, I thought the reds were the best part. I liked seeing the tailoring pieces. I loved a lot of the dresses. Seeing tailored pieces going into drape pieces, going into lace pieces was really interesting and very nice. I love seeing the black pieces and the hints of green that would then go into that yellow, that chartreuse, and then I liked the hats. The big hats were kind of cute. And then some more different types of colors. I loved the skirt looks. I really liked a lot of those, and they came in different colors with different types of styling on the top, but they were very cute. I was very drawn to them. I'm not sure why, but I was very drawn to them. I liked seeing some more neutrals coming in, and then the show ended with the big floor-length oversized coats that I actually really liked. I liked the white one the most, the yellow one the least, and then the other three, the black, the red, and the tan color, kind of just in the middle. But overall, it was a really strong Gucci collection, in my humble opinion, and I really liked it. And again, this gives me hope for Gucci. These last few collections with the new creative director gives me hope, because I like Gucci again. and I hated it prior to. And so I'm happy to see that this brand is making such a big shift and is realistically giving, to me, better fashion. So they're doing exactly what they need to do to get me back on board. And I know a lot of people liked Gucci prior to, but I didn't, and this is my opinion. So I'm happy to see that Gucci is doing stuff like this because I really, really like it. And I thought that this spring summer collection was really strong. Next is the Attico, and they are someone that I actually didn't know too much about prior to this particular season. I had seen some of the photos from the runway and I was intrigued, to say the least. And so I went through and kind of learned a little bit more about this collection and kind of the direction of this duo partnership of creative directors. And I was persuaded to like this designer. I was very interested, and I liked how the creative direction went for, you know, this particular collection, and overall I just liked it. So I added it. This particular collection for spring summer is called The Sound of Breaking Glass, and it is the imagery of a broken heart. And the reason why this collection is because both of the creative directors had gone through heartbreak themselves, and so they chose to translate it onto the runway through strength and fragility. And the way that fragility was written throughout the collection was with transparent fabrics to communicate transparency of feelings, and I thought that that was really interesting. The concept was super cool, and I appreciated how they created that and came up with that ideology for pushing their emotional traumas into fashion. This collection also had their Nike partnership within it. I believe it was like either like the second or third installation of them doing a Nike partnership. So that was interesting to see. I don't like Nike, but I did like some of the pieces. It's just a bummer that they were Nike. But it was interesting, and I thought that the way that they put the Nike partnership into this particular storyline was really interesting, and we'll get to that in a second. But the overall kind of progression of this particular collection is through the creation of contrasts with bold sensuality shining in sheer fabrics, hugging silhouettes, and intricate embroidery, and then on the other side of the coin, bringing in a form of masculinity with the Nike partnership. That masculinity is brought in with the durable fabrics and then the oversized cargos and bombers, and kind of just bringing in that athleisure vibe, and that was the contrast to the feminine side, or the super kind of bold and sheerness on this side, and then the sporty-ish side here. And so that's where that contrast comes in, and I really liked that. They described it as the coin of, you know, with the more feminine side on one and then the more masculine side on the other, but it describes the same woman. It describes their woman that they designed for, and I thought that was really interesting. And I think that is a really cool kind of contrast, because it is a reality, especially in like the idea of their fragility, you know, being fragile but also being strong. It brings those together, and I thought it was a good idea, and I thought it was a good concept. The colors were muted and time worn, and I really liked the coloring. I really liked this collection. I liked the colors, I liked the silhouettes, I like the looks that are both feminine and masculine. I like the sporty stuff, obviously. I like sporty designs, so I like seeing the Nike stuff, even though I don't like Nike. I like seeing the fringy stuff, the stuff that is very feminine, very sheer. I like seeing those little dresses and those little sheer looks. I like seeing the somewhat tailored looks. Overall, I just think it's a very strong collection, and I will definitely be looking out for this brand more so now because I am very intrigued and I want to see what they do. But I do really like this collection. I feel like to me it's like kind of like a good mishmash of what I personally like. I would wear a lot of it, honestly. I think Attico took a really personal inspiration and made it super pretty and super interesting and super fashion, and I really liked it. And I really think that the Attico is something that people should see more of if they don't, because I am now part of that little group. So I think they did a good job. Next we have Versace, which is my personal favorite. And this particular collection, Donatella used the Spring 97 Versus show as a starting point for inspiration. Versus was a diffusion line Donatella created in her own image, and like she would take care of the Versus line and then Gianni would do the regular main line for Versace. The ideology of Versus was full of clashing prints and patterns to bring a very energized perspective, and that's basically what she brought to this particular collection. Squiggly patterned knits and floral prints, silks, and some chainmail are direct links to the 97 Versus collection. The energy of the collection comes from the energy of the 90s, which meant that fashion was much more free, there was a lot more happiness, and like there wasn't as much thinking involved and being more casual about putting clothes together. And that was something that she valued and thought that was important, and so she put that energy into the collection. And this collection is just another example of Versace revisiting past collections, and they've been doing that since 2017. And it has proven to be smart and interesting for younger people to learn more about the past and learn about the history behind, you know, fashion and things like that. So it was a smart thing to do to continue to take inspiration from older collections as younger fashion lovers want to learn more about the past and look towards the past to see what it was like, since most of them, you know, weren't around, right? And I have to say, I love seeing references and reimagining past stuff because I am a fashion history person. And so to me, I love seeing it. This particular collection is much more youthful than Versace naturally is. There's more, like, that youthfulness comes out with those baby pastels and the slips and the cardigans and the denim. It's got just a lighter kind of feel to it. The true 70s inspiration that comes throughout this collection is wild. It comes in the color palettes and the fabrication choices, in the styling. Everything about it is so 70s, and that is the biggest like styling influence that this collection saw. The color palette is much more subtle than we are used to seeing for Versace, because we're always used to seeing bold colors usually, right? But this color palette is a mixture of, again, pretty 70s colors. Those camel browns, lavenders, coppers, lilacs, softer yellows, violets, and obviously whites are a good thing to have in there too. I am someone that I don't like the 70s. I don't particularly love 70s fashion, and because this collection is obviously men's and women's, I'm not talking about the men's at all, but I just want to say that the men's stuff I liked the least because it's just screamed 70s, and I didn't love it, but I'm not going to talk about the men's stuff. As much as I don't particularly like the 70s, I did actually really like this collection. I loved the colors, I loved the styling. I actually really liked the patterns and mixing patterns. If it's done well, it's really good, and I do think that this was done really, really well. I liked the knits, and I liked the dresses, and I liked the hints of like the red tights that would be throughout the styling. I thought that was really good. hint of it. Of course, seeing the signature chainmail is always good. I liked like the florals that were in it, and then even like the squiggly like knits I liked. The denim was a nice touch to make it a little bit more casual. Overall, I just really liked the collection, and I didn't know if I was going to at the beginning because it's so 70s, and I don't like the 70s. But it was good, and I think Donatella did a really, really good job with it. And the other thing too that makes this super special, and it was super pretty, and it was super pretty on her, was a push of technology with this particular collection. And they did a 3D printed look that was the gold sequin dress worn by Anouk Yai, and it looked amazing on her. The gold on her like super dark gorgeous skin was so good, and this dress was built without seams, and they were able to like program the signature hourglass shape that they do in a lot of their dresses. They were able to program it into the machine, and they printed out a seamless dress and walked it down the runway. There might have been like a few like tops or skirts that looked like they were the same material, so I'm going to assume that they were also 3D printed, but I only saw really anybody talking about the dress that was worn, and I thought that that was a really interesting thing to add to the runway and give a different look, and not just having the chainmail that they always do, because that is signature Versace. So it was nice to see that, and to see it 3D printed, which obviously isn't new to anyone, but seeing it done in a way that is really clean was really cool. But overall, Versace has not failed in making me like this, even though I was hesitant, but there's a reason why I think that they're my favorite. And regardless of if it's from the 70s, Donatella Versace does something that makes me like it even then. And I really think that this is a really good spring summer collection. I think the colors work perfectly for it. I think the silhouettes work perfect for it. Everything about it is just exactly what she was going for, with being freer and not thinking too much, and just having more energy and being happier. It fully feels like that type of collection, which spring and summer are the go-to seasons for that type of energy. And so I think she did a really good job with bringing her 97 Versus collection and bringing it into modern times with those historical hints throughout. So I think she did a really, really good job, and Versace wins again for me, so there's nothing new there. The last collection we are going to talk about is from Ferrari. And I'm going to be honest in saying that ever since, it's only been a few years now, but I've always been confused as to what made Ferrari decide that they were going to go into the fashion lane. Obviously it started out very like F1 with how they designed things, with racing jackets and all that stuff, and they've slowly become a little bit more fashion. So that was very interesting to see, especially this collection is very fashion, but it's always been confusing to me as to like what made them want to do that, because it's like it has nothing to do with, like, Ferraris have nothing to do with fashion directly. They're both luxury things, right? But they don't really, to me at least, they don't match very much. But this is the 7th collection that the F1 circuit competitor has done, and there was a drastic shift in viewpoints for the brand and how they were going to change their fashion, which again is very prevalent, with fewer pieces that are designed to make an impact on the runway and for the fashion consumer. It was actually created more for the fashion consumer versus the Ferrari car consumer type person. The creation started with like a super deep dive investigation into what the members of the official Ferrari owners club wanted, and they essentially wanted good, basically. They wanted craftsmanship, which is what I'm assuming most Ferrari owners want as well. I'm not sure. I don't have one. But after the investigation was concluded, they found that their customer wanted the craftsmanship. They wanted designs that were concrete and that were wearable and that had well-defined proportions and volume. So it was definitely like going down the route of their customer just wanted something that was impactful, well made, and has a little bit more like tailoring to it. That's what I would take from it, with some added texture here and there. So with that, the collection bounced between tailoring and more structured pieces and like unfussy, like very, you know, easy dresses and looser designs. So it was like that mixture, right? Sport separates were in leathers and jerseys, while tailoring came in obviously stiffer fabrications as well, which is pretty natural, so it has that structure a little bit more. The color palette went from bronze browns into deep olive greens into yellow and yellow whites, and then it went with a little bit of denim, light denim splashed into it, and then went back to white for a second, and then swung right into Ferrari's signature color, red. The ending of the collection, they closed it out with a few looks that had meshed horse embroidery, the Ferrari horse logo. They used that as an embroidery and created a dress, a skirt, and I think a top, and that closed out the show. I liked this collection. I liked the color palettes, I liked the designs, I liked the stuff that was tailored, and then the stuff that was looser and drapier. I liked seeing how that stuff walked down the runway and changed from going from structure to loose and then back to structure and to loose. I liked seeing that it was hard to tell that it was Ferrari, because it didn't feel like Ferrari like some of the other collections in the past have felt like that. This felt like an actual fashion collection, and I liked seeing that. The leather stuff was good. I loved the pops of those greens and those yellows kind of right in the middle, and I liked seeing that denim section just to break up all that color, and then of course bringing that red in at the end, seeing the darker version of the red, and then the standard Ferrari red color to end it all out. I like seeing the leather pieces being both obvious leather pieces and being those sportier kind of things, and then bringing that leather into some nice draped silhouettes like dresses and stuff like that. So I liked seeing it. I didn't love the horse embroidery all that much. If it wasn't a horse, I think I would like it more, but then that defeats the purpose of it. So, but it, like, visually it's fine, but as soon as you figure out that it's a horse, it's wonky to me. But I still liked the far away visual of it. But overall, I think Ferrari did a really good job, and I think them choosing to actually take their fashion journey more seriously and actually look for what their customer really wants and is, in separating car from fashion, I think was a really smart thing, and I think it translates really, really well. So I think Ferrari did a really good job, and I think their creative director is moving in a really strong path to make Ferrari actually like a strong fashion sector under the car F1 racy stuff that they do. So I think Ferrari did a really good job, and I think that this is a good, simple spring-summer collection. And that is the end of the collections that I wanted to spotlight. I think overall, Milan is always going to give good fashion, and I think people always have high expectations because Milan and Paris are the main fashion weeks. So I myself had expectations, and I think overall the collections across the board were really strong. Obviously there were a ton, so I only talked about a few. There were a lot that I really liked and didn't talk about. There were some that I didn't particularly love, but I didn't talk about it, and there were some that I don't have much of a solid opinion yet. I thought it was good, but you know. But overall, Milan, produced exactly what is come to expect of Milan, and these collections that I talked about I absolutely loved. But of course, these are all my opinions, and I would love to hear what you guys thought of Milan Fashion Week. If you agreed on some of the collections that I talked about, if you disagreed, if there were collections that I didn't talk about that you really liked, I would love to hear some opinions, so drop a comment down below. And next week we will do Paris Fashion Week to end out spring summer 2025. But until then, this is the end of the video, so thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!